This is straight up disrespectful, as a recent article slaps the Canucks and their prospects in the face with where they land amongst the rest of the NHL, which is all the more reason why these prospects and the Canucks organization are ready to prove everyone wrong. We're going to be breaking down all that in this episode of Canucks Digest, but first, if you're part of the 58% of viewers who aren't yet subscribed yet and you want to stay up to date on all things Canucks, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the episodes when they drop. And with that, let's hop straight into it, which is the Canucks prospects are disrespected. So Daily Faceoff put out an article recently breaking down their ranking of the 32 NHL teams and their prospect pools. Last year, the Vancouver Canucks ranked around 15, 16, around the middle of the pack of the NHL. This year, they are ranked at 28th, which is absolutely insane considering the key prospects that they're listing right there as their top three, which we're going to hop into in a second, but also the other kind of prospects that they have in there. But the snippet says that most NHL teams with 2 playoff appearances in the past decade would have a solid prospect pipeline. The Canucks, though, are seriously lacking depth. The Canucks are hoping players like Tom Willander and Jonathan Lekkerimäki can live up to their potential and become stars playing key roles in the NHL. So while I think Vancouver's pipeline definitely lacks depth, the high-end talent could be impact players sooner rather than later. And yes, that last part, I definitely agree with it, where maybe it lacks a tiny bit of depth, but not a ton of depth where they land at number 28, but that does have a lot of high-end talent possibilities, where we see that the floor is not entirely low for Lekkerimäki and Willander, but the ceiling is incredibly high for these guys as well, with what they could be capable of because of what we've seen from them at the junior level. And the first of which that we'll hop into in a second is, of course, Jonathan Lekkerimäki. You guys know, if you've been following the channel long enough, this is Mark's golden goose of all the prospects. I definitely love him, and Mark does too, of course. But when looking at the other prospects too, Jonathan Lekkerimäki isn't just the biggest name on there. There are some other ones on there, of course, the recently drafted Braden Coots and Medvedev from the London Knights as well, who are going to be playing in the minors for one more year before jumping up to Abbotsford, I should say. But they'll still probably get some playing time here and there. Anthony Romani is one that just hit the NCAA after aging out of the OHL, where he was an absolute demon in scoring so many points and leading the OHL. Riley Patterson from the Barrie Colts as well as someone on there. You got Parker Alkos, and then you got Sansonens, and then Celebrini as well, and some other ones. Bjork was also a recent draft pick as well. And there are some other ones there, but like I said, Jonathan Lekkerimäki, of course, is the biggest one. His shot may be the best thing of his offensive tools, but it's not the only one. He's a reasonably depth handler with the skill to blend pass receptions into dangles, deceptive maneuvering, and a sound mechanical base with the puck. And we've seen this in his time with Abbotsford, where in 36 games, he was able to log 28 points, and in the playoffs, he was able to contribute as well, with 3 goals and 4 assists, combining for 7 points as well, coming off of a season where in his previous stint with the Abbotsford Canucks was 6 games, only 2 points, but then as well in the Sweden and with Arbor HK, he had really solid seasons and showings also on the international stage with Sweden, getting 15 points in 12 games and then 12 points in 7 games. And then with Albro as well, getting 31 points in 46 games. Hoping he can translate that to the NHL level as well, where we see there with the Vancouver Canucks last season, he appeared in 24 games, only scoring 3 goals and 3 assists as well. So it's not entirely what you want to see with a guy that shows this much potential and playing at this level in the minors and in the AHL, and just can't really put it onto the NHL ice. But again, that was his first real season playing with the Vancouver Canucks and getting a decent amount of cracks at the bat. So for him to come in and get that many opportunities is pretty awesome to see. Here's to hoping that he will get a few more opportunities this season. I definitely think that will happen, just because of the way that Vancouver likes to just rotate guys in and out of calling them up from Abbotsford and sending them back down, and the way that Manny Malhotra is developing these guys. I can't wait to see what Jonathan Lekkerimäki and some of these other guys like Max Sasson as well can do once they make that jump into the NHL and get those opportunities coming off of a Calder Cup season. The second of which on here as well as that we're going to touch on is, of course, Tom Willander, which is probably our second most hyped prospect that we have in our system, because his value stems from the combination of high-end skating and motor. He's always engaged defensively, using his dynamic posture and evasive footwork to guide attackers away from the middle and break up plays along the boards. When you add that and the fact that he's both strong and skilled physically and relentlessly competes for every puck, he's a nightmare to play against. And we saw that on full display when he played in Boston University. For a defenseman, logging that amount of points is pretty awesome. I know only 2 goals, but still 22 assists in 39 games is still really solid. And this could be a guy that could be almost like a Filip Hronek replacement if they want to move on from that long, inexpensive contract and have him fill in, or even if Quinn Hughes is gone, especially then is probably where we'll see Hronek be moved. But again, this is a guy that could be that solution in the defensive core where he can be a guy that can produce points and can lay the body as well. So I definitely like the possibility of what Tom Willander can show in this Vancouver system. It's going to be the first time that we're going to see him in the AHL this season, so I cannot wait to see what him and Manny Malhotra get up to after he has finally signed that entry-level contract. That was one that was a long time coming for Tom Willander to sign. That was one that a lot of fans were waiting on. We were just inching closer to that happening with all the discussions and the buzz that was kicking up a couple months ago until it eventually happened, not only a few weeks later, really, since the conversation picked up again, and it was just a matter of their negotiations and all the reports that came out with that. And then they finally put ink to paper, and we finally now are going to see how much longer we're going to have him in Vancouver to see what he is capable of with that contract that he signed at that entry level. And then it just opens the floor for a major contract when he is ready to sign with the Vancouver Canucks. Hopefully everything goes according to plan there. But then it takes us to the third one, which is the newest prospect for Vancouver, and that is Braden Coots, who is a guy that pre-draft I was really high on as far as how Vancouver could draft him. He was projected to go exactly where Vancouver drafted him, and that is where they took him at number 15 overall. And this is somebody that is a one-man forecheck. His motor and energy are undeniably elite. In single shift, he can amass multiple retrievals, guiding opponents into a big hit, spinning off of a check-in, passing, and winning another race by winning inside position meters before the boards and repeating over and over until the puck finds twine. And the other thing that I really want to note here that is a big thing with Braden Coots is that he was a captain for the Seattle Thunderbirds for two straight seasons heading into his second season as the captain now. But he was one of the youngest captains in the WHL last season, and he was an absolute demon with points, getting 63 points in 60 games, notching 26 goals and 37 assists, and then in the playoffs having 8 points in 6 games as well. That is what you want to see out of a captain on your team and out of your newly acquired prospect that you drafted in the first round. And then on the world stage as well at the U18s, getting 12 points in only 7 games. This guy is an absolute machine. And this is somebody that is going to be one to watch for in a couple years when he makes that jump to Vancouver. It's just a matter of when. I definitely think after this season in Seattle, we're going to see him probably jump over to Abbotsford full time for that period, and then getting some chances in Vancouver as a result. So probably a little bit of opportunities in Abbotsford this year. We're getting a ton of them next year, and then it'll be the opposite next year where he's going to get a little bit of opportunities in the NHL like he got in Abbotsford then for this upcoming season. And then after that season, hopefully he's just ready to be a full-fledged Vancouver Canuck with what upside this guy can bring. So with all of those guys, with looking at Braden Coots, Tom Willander, Jonathan Lekkerimäki, those guys alone on any other prospect pool would probably be good enough to get them up into the top 15 at least, especially considering this prospect pool got better from last year and they were in the middle of the pack last year. You could probably bump them up into almost the top 10 as far as that goes with those 3 guys. Then you look at some of the other ones they got. Medvedev is a really good goalie that I think is going to be almost like an Artur Shilov's 2.0 once he ages out of the OHL and goes from London to Abbotsford. So I'm really excited to see what he does there between the pipes. And then as well, Anthony Romani, you guys know that this is my guy. Just like Jonathan Lekkerimäki is Mark's golden goose for prospects, Anthony Romani is mine. This was a guy that before last year's draft, I was hoping and predicting that they were going to draft him, and they went out and they did. And he was the OHL's leading goal scorer, and they brought him in after he had that chip on his shoulder being passed off on his first draft eligible year. That was one of the biggest things I really like, is that when you look at the prospects, a lot of these guys play with chips on their shoulder. Braden Coots, he had a chip on his shoulder as the youngest captain in the WHL, and he flourished in that. Jonathan Lekkerimäki has a chip on his shoulder because of what he can do on the power play. That adds a lot. Tom Willander, with his size and his playmaking ability, that brings a lot to it. Anthony Romani, his first draft eligible year, he was passed over because his points weren't enough. He said, all right, I'm going to go and double those point totals, lead the OHL in goal scoring, and then they ended up drafting him, and now the Vancouver Canucks have him. So all these things considered, paired with, like I said, Medvedev, Parker Alkos, Sansonens, and then you have Wilson Bjork as the newest acquisition as well in the draft too, along with Medvedev and Braden Coots. All these guys, I don't know why in the hell that Daily Faceoff is putting them near the bottom, in the bottom 4 at that, when they have prospects like that in their system. Yeah, you can say that depth is a problem up front, but when you look at the other prospect pools, their depth isn't nearly as crazy as Vancouver's is. I'm not saying it's crazy in a certain sense of it should be in the top 10 in that respect, but when you say that depth is the main thing why they're in the bottom 4, when you look at their depth as a whole, yes, it's not crazy full like some of the top 10s, but it's not nearly bad enough to be in the bottom 4 with some of the bottom feeders of the NHL, considering this is a team that's made the playoffs just 2 seasons ago. And some other ones that they were ranked below, I do not think that they should have been dropped below them just because of the 5 that I just mentioned right there. Those are 5 guys that are good enough to get Vancouver into a middle ranking spot on Daily Faceoff's list in my eyes, or just in the entire NHL prospect pool. I think Vancouver is definitely better than 28th and are definitely worthy of being in the top 15. But let us know what you guys think about it down in the comments below. Do you think Daily Faceoff was completely shafting us on this one and we should be higher than 28, or do you think that we're sitting right where we should be? Let us know down in the comments below. But that's going to do it for this episode of Canucks Digest. I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.